Hello and welcome to CXO Bytes, a podcast brought to you by the Green Software Foundation and dedicated to supporting chiefs of information, technology, sustainability, and AI as they aim to shape a sustainable future through clean software. We will uncover the strategies and a big green move that's helped drive results for business and for the planet. I am your host, Sanjay Podder.
Okay, Sanjay, welcome to our business summit.
Thank you so much for having me today. My pleasure.
It's a pleasure having you. So, in today's rapidly developing digital technologies and the digital transformation, a significant dilemma arises, especially for sustainability. On one hand, these technologies offer a substantial, huge potential to address environmental issues, and on the other hand, there exists an entails substantial resource consumption. So first, I'd like to start by asking your perspective on this, and how can technologies both solve and exacerbate environmental problems?
Great question. And there's a duality here between technology and sustainability. Uh, you know, when you look at sustainability and if you look at sustainable development goals that we have, the 17 sustainable development goals, one thing that strikes you that they are exponential in nature. The impact is huge. We are not talking about small things. We are talking about scale. And you cannot do anything at scale without technology. And in this case, if we talk about information communication technology, we talk about artificial intelligence, for example, these are precisely the kind of tools we need today to address the sustainability challenges that we are facing, whether it's a climate change, whether it is, issues of building a more inclusive society, for example, biodiversity destruction that is happening. Each of these areas, you need technology, you need AI, you need blockchain, you need digital, right? There is no second thought about it. In fact, we did a survey of companies and we found out that 70% of the companies we surveyed, who were able to reduce the carbon emissions in the production, in their operation, they were able to do it because they use artificial intelligence. Now, so there is absolutely no question about the role of technology in sustainability. But what we miss out is, if we are not using this technology in the right way, in the right manner, technology itself has a carbon footprint. Technology can cause a big environmental impact. For example, technology can amplify the issues of bias, for example, privacy. So we have to make sure that while we use this technology, we have to use it in a very sustainable and responsible way. And the data points are very interesting. For example, the same AI that is going to help us so much. If you look at AI and you take a large language model like Bloom, which is open source, so some of the data we know, a 176 billion parameter model, when they trained it, I think the carbon emission out of it is somewhere around 24.7 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And if you look at all its life cycle, including the embodied carbon of the hardware on which it was trained, it goes up to 50 metric ton of CO2 equivalent, for example. And if you take larger models, all the more popular large language models, they may go as high as 500 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So the same technology that is helping us on one hand is also causing emission, carbon emission. And the impact is not just restricted there, as we know. It is also on other resources like water. You do some, very harmless query to your, the large language models for some questions. Which other cities I should visit in Turkey in my next trip to Turkey, right? You ask 20, 30 questions. Behind the scene, that's half a liter of water that was used for cooling the data centers, for generation of electricity. And we also know about the other dimension about energy use. So that's the whole thing. Now, the good part is we don't necessarily have to have such a severe impact. There are tools and techniques and methods whereby we can design, develop, deploy these systems in a way that they are much more having lower impact on the environment. For example, they are safeguarding privacy, they give you much more safer response. There's less bias. So overall, it is very much possible to bring a culture such that the software you write is more sustainable and more responsible. So
Yeah,
that's a silver
agree.
lining, right? So to your
Yeah.
first question, a big duality. If you are in business, therefore your strategy, your technology and sustainability strategy needs to be integrated. And you
Mhm.
have to look at it very holistically, not just at sustainability by technology. How do I
Mhm.
use tech to do sustainability? But sustainability in technology. How do I
Yeah.
make sure that the technology is being used in a much more sustainable and responsible way?
Yeah, this is the crucial question as is said, and technology is crucial, as you mentioned, in all those sustainability efforts as well. And we also know that software is at the core of all these technologies, and companies need to adapt the way software is designed, developed, deployed, as it said, and used to minimize its carbon footprint. So how can they achieve this?
Well, the software stack, there are many decarbonization levers in the software stack. When you talk about a software stack, there's obviously the code itself, which has to be written in a manner that it makes less demand on the underlying hardware, for example, right? So you need to bring that kind of design patterns, architectures, choice of programming languages, all that have a bearing on the emissions or the energy use and emissions. For example, there is a whole study about interpreted languages and compiled languages. A language like C++, if you write a code and you write a similar code for doing the same thing with Python, obviously it is found that the C++ code will need less energy and will emit less carbon. Now, not to say that people have to write in C++, but it's just a data point that are you even thinking about, which language are you selecting? And then there are around architectures, for example. And then the very interesting decarbonization lever is the migration of your workloads to hyperscalers, for example, to the cloud. And why does that reduce emission? Because the hyperscalers, because of the scale and investments, they invest a lot in renewable energy. They have the right technology, like they use AI, for example, to make sure that their data centers are run with a relatively lower power usage efficiency, what we call the PUE. So they have the elasticity because of economy of scale. Their utilizations are higher, so the idle time of hardware is less. And now, if you see, there is a lot of investment in what they call the custom silicon chip, and that's the next big thing where you write software with the underlying hardware in mind, with the optimizing the capabilities of the underlying chips. And now, when you do all this, the code you write, the system you build, it needs less energy. And
Mhm.
also because this cloud centers are typically, you can select where you want to put your workload. You can select a location if your business strategy permits, where the carbon intensity of electricity is lower. In other words, the electricity is more generated by renewable energy, for example. As a result of this, not only you're using less energy, you are also emitting less carbon. And there are
Mhm.
similar decarbonization levers even in the field of AI. You don't need to take the biggest of the large language models. You don't need to use models with billions and trillions of parameter. You have to use the model which is fit for purpose. You have to use the model which gives you the required accuracy. And there are a lot of startups coming up in this field that allow you to do, for example, dynamic routing to a large language model which has less emission,
Mhm.
for example, right? And in the field of AI, a number of different techniques. You can do pruning, quantization. You can write your prompts in a way, so that the overall emissions are lower. It's called green prompting techniques, for example.
Yes. Yes.
Probably that's a whole session I can take, but
Yeah,
the
sure.
the
But I really would like to come to the AI and what can the companies can do about it, especially regarding the energy consumption. But I want to dig in a little bit more in the data centers because we've been talking about data centers, and everybody knows that how they impact the global energy consumption. And so, what innovative technological solution can be applied here in data centers? And can we specifically discuss software-based solutions here?
yeah. Uh, a number of different things can be done when it comes to data center. And you're right, the data centers are mushrooming thanks to the generative AI widespread adoption. In fact, some data points I was looking for Ireland, for example, the data center power usage went quadrupled from 2015 to 2023, from 5% to 21%. There are cities like London, which is not allowing new housing because there is a challenge of power. The power is being consumed by the data centers. Now, what are the kind of solution one can think about? Now, first of all, not all data centers are safe, right? The data centers, and I also touched upon it in my earlier response. We did a very detailed study for one of the hyperscalers to understand, if you move a workload from one data center to a hyperscaler, how much emission reduction is possible? Anywhere from 50 to 90%, for example. Again, there are several different factors based on which is the hyperscaler, which is the location, and so on and so forth. But typically, you will see the PUE of hyperscalers because they run it at scale, and for all the reasons I've mentioned, is far better, right? That is one. Now, from a software based approach perspective, when you when you design workloads for a particular system for to be run on the data center, you can make it much more carbon aware. Now, what do I mean by carbon aware? Your backup jobs, for example, will run when there is renewable energy. So they are scheduled at the time of the day, or they will be run in a location where there's a bit lower carbon intensity of electricity, right? So, yeah, I'm also the co-founder and chairman of the Green Software Foundation. One of the things that we built was we have defined is the carbon aware SDK. So you can, for example, use a carbon aware SDK to figure out how do you make your systems, run at a time when the carbon emissions are lower, the carbon intensity of electricity is lower. That is one thing. You can build systems which are more cloud native, serverless architectures, for example. That is the other thing you can. There are the software-based solutions that more advanced data centers use. They use AI, for example, to predict how they can lower the energy that is used for non-IT purpose. For
I will.
example, cooling purpose, right? So they are able to
Yes.
optimize and distribute that energy. So there's a lot of use of AI there.
Yeah.
Uh,
So when you just I'm sorry I interrupted you, but when you just mentioned the I also want to ask my other question too. Maybe you would like to combine your answers with them because I really would like to. We would like to learn about the tools and methods that can be used to measure the energy consumption of AI and machine learning models too. So maybe you
yeah.
can
No,
also
that's a very
mention
good
that.
question. And this is again an evolving area, but I can
Yeah.
tell you what state of the art because a lot of new things are happening as we speak. But when it comes to AI, you have to look at AI very holistically across its life cycle, right?
Mhm.
Uh, in traditional AI, people were more worried about training, whereas in the generative AI, people are now more worried about inferencing because that's where more emission is happening. Now, in each of these cases, how do you really measure? the emissions happening or energy use, right? So when you are deploying AI, if you are deploying in your own infrastructure, the first thing you can do is the carbon accounting tools that each of the hyperscalers give you, right? And then you can use that to figure out how much emission is happening, or how can you lower that, because you can only reduce what you can measure. So that is because end of the day AI is also a workload, right? So you can that's on the cloud side. And then, there are techniques which are more on the software side that have come up, like the very recent ISO standard by Green Software Foundation called the Software Carbon Intensity Specification. That also can be used. Then there are a host of open source tools, code carbon that can be used with Python libraries. There is a cloud carbon, CCF cloud carbon framework. And again, the Green Software Foundation has created an impact framework. And then I'm also coming across a lot of API calls which help you open source, which help you to tell how much was a carbon emission for every prompt that you just made, right? And there are a lot of startup systems coming up in this space. So this is a very evolving field, but it's coming up with a lot of open source solutions, a lot of solutions from big tech players, from the startup community. There's a big opportunity for the startup community. So that's what you have, a lot of host of tools. The GSF, which I chair, we are also currently focused a lot on the SCI for AI. That's the version that we are working on.
Okay. So of course, there's this issue of ESG goals when we're especially talking about sustainability. So how can promoting the sustainable use of technology contribute to the companies in achieving their ESG goals and in attracting talented employees at the same time?
No, I think this is the best question. That why should you even do it? And I know there's a bigger climate change, sustainability thing. So it does appeal to the all the talented youngsters who are entering the field, right? But the fact is they want to work for organizations who are serious about the sustainability issues. So that's about the talent. So I'm aware of businesses which are weaving the sustainability messages in their corporate communication because they want to reach to their employees, to the stakeholders about what are they doing about it. And employees want to work for such organizations. There's a lot of research in that area. The other important research, in fact, we did in Accenture was the correlation between sustainable technology, the ESG score, and business performance. And what we observed in our study was that sustainable technology organizations which have a strategy on sustainable technology, they have a correlation to better ESG score compared to their peers in the market. And the other interesting fact was that businesses which have better ESG score, they outperform their competitors 2.6 times in the total, shareholder value they return, right? So even if you are not as concerned for the planet as you should be, you still have a real tangible reason because your business benefits when you have better ESG score and your ESG score benefits when you embrace sustainable technology. So there's a pure correlation, and obviously your employees are asking for it. So I think that is the other big driver for decision makers. These things cannot happen unless it comes from the top. It's a culture change, right? All things that we discuss.
Exactly.
And it is a very strategic imperative. And that's what sustainable technology is all about.
Sanjay, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you in our summit, and thank you for all these valuable insights.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Just a reminder to follow CXO Bytes on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. And please do leave a rating and review if you like what we are doing. It helps other people discover the show, and of course, we want more listeners. To find out more about the Green Software Foundation, please visit greensoftware.foundation. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode.